Hey, it's happening.
YouTube.
Well,
Okay.
good morning, everybody. It's Jeff and Marcia, and we are here with the best guest that anybody could ask for, Mr. John Fusco. How are you today?
Thank you. Thanks, Jeff. Marcia, I'm doing great. Doing great. Wonderful to be here on such a celebratory day for screenwriters everywhere.
It feels the energy everywhere feels different. You know, you could see people, even Twitter was fun yesterday, and it's been a long time since anybody could say that.
Yeah.
So yeah, very interesting. How was your strike? Did you I know you're out of town.
Well, I'm literally in the woodshed. You know how when we say we're going to hunker down, whether in music or in writing or any type of art, you go into the woodshed. I'm literally in my woodshed on the coast of Maine. And this is where I've been hunkered down, working on stuff, working on music, on some prose stuff, keeping the chops sharp.
Yeah.
And really excited, feeling that spirit of creativity and being able to get everybody back to work is just so awesome.
Like I said, you can feel it. I feel like there's going to be a new enthusiasm for a while. I feel like there's a new energy. You've been around for a couple of these now. It feels like there's also a lot of reshuffling of the deck that occurs after a strike. The industry changes, the people change, the styles change a little. So any ideas, any predictions from you? What's next for us all?
Well, this is my third strike. And I was pretty young in the industry in 1988 for that strike, and then the 2007. There's always the pendulum kind of swings, and we coming back into a really exciting and fertile period and break some new ground. And what I'm really hoping for is I want to see original screenplays getting out there again. Back in my time, it was, if somebody wrote an original spec and it was a labor of love, it didn't have to fit into a genre box. It didn't have to have underlying IP. These days, we've kind of reached a place where, you need to bring in the IP, the cast, basically have the movie delivered with a bow on it. And now I just hope that we can get back to the real art and craft that was taught to me by my mentors, who were the guys who were blacklisted back in the McCarthy era.
Wow. It's the connection is wild that you could reach out to writers today and that you had writers then reaching out to you. It's like, that's like, it's a wonderful, like, to keep that connection. I just think about the future. I was thinking the other day about the kind of owners that we have now, these tech people and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, somebody just needs to get in their ear and say, what's the cheapest kind of material to generate? Self-generated original ideas. You don't have to pay for any books. You don't have to own any rights. You don't have to renew anything. And one person to pay residuals to. It's like, here's, you want to know how to streamline your business? Buy originals.
That's right. Yeah.
So
I broke into the industry, with an original spec that, was a kind of coming of age story set in the world of the blues. And I remember that first weekend that it went out, my agents were getting these calls, and it's like, we love this voice. Who is this? Where'd this guy come from? This kind of Mississippi Delta material. And writers just don't, they haven't had that opportunity in recent times. And really it's, okay, I need to get in a room on someone else's show, or I need to land the Marvel gig. But I'm really positive about, the changes that are going to come out of this. And, my son, he's really, breaking into the industry at this time.
Oh, wow.
Just like, Dad, wow, what a time to come into he was, just getting things underway. So I'm so happy for the new generation of writers. And that's why I'm thrilled to be here, to connect with them.
I feel like if we all made our top 10 lists right now, 6 or 7 of those top 10 would be mid-budget grown-up movies for the most part, the kind that aren't made now or have been moved to streaming TV for a while. But it does feel like now there's that energy to get hey, let's come back and let's make these things. We all care about them. Now let's take the chance, and maybe it's on us to go make them all profitable. Like it's like, as long as we show up, you know how it is. I mean, you've seen this market for decades. I have to imagine the one constant you've seen in terms of the market is they follow the ticket buyers to a certain extent.
Yes. Oh yeah, 100%. And and you're right, Jeff. I sense a real reset here, because everyone's in this business because we love movies at the end of the day. And to have been cut off from it, to have been cut off from the act of creating that, I think it's making everybody soul search and say, why did I ever get into this? Why did I love this? Let's come in with fresh energy and do it up.
What did you watch during this strike time? I went back and watched, literally, like you did. It just struck me what you just said, because I asked myself, like, why do you care and what do you love? And I made a list of those movies that really drew me in from the beginning and made me love it. And I went back and looked at them again, like Singing in the Rain and Casablanca and Maltese Falcon and oh man, the John Huston Man Who Would Be King.
I went back to that too. The African Queen.
Yeah.
Waterfront, Only Are the Brave, Johnny Guitar.
Oh wow, I have Nicholas Ray, right? It's yeah, wow. It was so fun to revisit it and feel that spirit. There's a recent movie from 2016 called Sing Street. I don't know if you've ever seen it. I think as a music guy, you would love it. It's about a 15-year-old in Ireland who starts a band in the mid 80s to impress a girl. And it just so got it right. And it like, to me, when I revisited that recently, it like lives alongside those other movies. It's something with that kind of spirit and stuff. It's like, it's still out there, like it's still there to be had. I just, two things. One thing personally, was the first script that you were talking about earlier, was that Crossroads? Was that literally your first one out there? That's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm not to sound, so this is meant as a complete honoring compliment. I was in high school when Crossroads came out, skipped school to see it. The marketing campaign around that movie was so intense. You could not escape that movie was coming. And I was so lost in the Robert Johnson legend at the time. I don't know if the box set had come out yet or was still to come out, but I had the Smithsonian, the stuff that you could buy at the Smithsonian. Yeah. And it was like, to see that, it was like, oh man, like somebody got there, like somebody did it, so, you crushed my high school dreams that day in the best way possible. You got there first. So, yeah. And then I skipped school to go see Young Guns, which was a badge of honor at that time. And it was like, that is and remains, to me, that's your Goldman movie, your William Goldman movie in so many ways. You know what I mean? It's like, it just has that full breadth of what a movie can be. And to me also, your script comes from like living IP. Like, it's not IP in that you went out and bought some book or some magazine article or something, but it was the legends, like this real story. And you hewed close to the truth, which I mean, so anyway, out of this comes a bunch of questions. First off, do you really succeed in this business by doing what you love?
You do. I mean, and that's the thing, it's, I recently adapted Paulo Coelho's wonderful book, The Alchemist.
Oh, wow.
And there's a line in the book and in my adaptation that if you want something bad enough in life, the entire universe will conspire to make it happen. And, it's as I said to my son, you've got to love it enough to work harder than everyone else around you. And you've got to want it so bad that you put in that time and you put in that heart and soul. And to that point, I believe you really need to tap into your passions, your deepest loves in life. I mean, when I wrote Crossroads, I was a blues fanatic who ran away from home and traveled down south in search of lost legends like Robert Johnson. And I just loved that world and that music. And every day that I worked on that script was a joy. I was doing what I loved. And I believe that was conveyed, that kind of, spirit of love was alive when people read it and felt it. I remember a producer reading it and said, "I've been reading so many scripts, and this one has a heartbeat."
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you gotta love it and want it, badly.
Well, one of the things that I tell people who come to these sessions that Marcia and I do is that they can always, they've seen everything. They've seen every horse chase, they've seen every gunfight, they've seen every jump off the river, they've seen everything that there is to see. They very rarely feel. And if you can make them feel something when they're in your story, then they'll become the champion of it. And it sounds like maybe you feel the same way. Is that one of the tricks to longevity?
Well, I believe it is. And it's really, about the emotion. It's about catharsis and connecting with the reader, with the viewer. And when they walk out, when they put your script down or they walk out of that theater, something's happened. A change has happened inside. I had a good friend who used to say, when he walked out of the movie theater, and the first thing he felt was, "I want to call my family." He said that was his barometer.
Right.
But yeah, you're absolutely right. It's easy to do spectacle and pyrotechnics and the kind of the visual eye candy, but to really get down to what it's about, and that circles back around to what I'm talking about, those original stories that come from an original voice, real heart and soul.
And dominated for so long. It's really only as it's gotten larger and more corporatized that there's been this need. I always tell people, I think the need for IP is, well, somebody else published this and didn't get fired, so it's like, maybe I'll be okay, more than like being excited about something or, so, but the original, I feel like given the deal that we all saw yesterday and how we feel about going into this new time and the promotion of new voices within the industry, which is always, I just feel like you said something earlier about being a fan. We all came here because we're fans. This new push, this new energy, and this new sort of wider inclusion of many more voices just gives us better stuff as moviegoers and TV watchers. So it's like, to oppose these changes or the way that the industry is going and wants to go only feels to be a bad fan and to stand in the way of good stuff. I feel like you came out of a time that created so much of the stuff that we that we all grew up like addicted to, you know what I mean? And like, you were there in that moment. And like, selfishly, I just want to ask you, what's the biggest difference you think in the industry between 86 and 88 and 89 and all those, those times of those things and now? How does it differ for you?
Well, I mean, I think it's really, again, it's just the material that was being sought after. Scripts that were being read on weekends, were original ideas. And whether it was an original screenplay like Crossroads or, an original actioner like Lethal Weapon, or, in Young Guns, as you said, it was history, but, with a built-in brand. There was just a wider field of pure potential and opportunity. And it's become so narrow and demoralizing, along with all the other demoralizing aspects that we've made great headway on during this strike. But just the material alone, with my son coming to me and saying, "I got this idea, I want to do this one," and I hear this voice on one shoulder from the reps who are going to go, "Don't even do it, don't even start it," and then my true voice, and the voice that I speak to young writers with, saying, Young Guns being a case in point. Don't listen to anyone who tells you that, okay, it doesn't stand a chance, it's not trending, it's not going to happen. With Young Guns, I was new in the industry. Crossroads had just gotten made. It would go on to become something of a cult classic, and especially in the world of music, and it kind of lit the fuse for a lot of our greatest guitar players playing out there now, which means a lot to me. but the movie did not perform well when it was released. Coppola said movies are defined by time, and I think over time, people have forgotten that, and it's got a big following now. But my agents, came to me and they said, "Look, you're still getting offered development deals. You should take one of these gigs. It's high paying. You're still hot right now." And I went around to these meetings and heard these ideas, and I was just like, I don't know how to write like that. Hey, we're going to throw you this idea, okay? And these aliens come down, they abduct the, and I'm just like, I don't have any access code to aliens. I just don't. Maybe if it was cowboys and aliens, but I just felt, no, I know what I want to do next. And I'm crazy obsessed with the idea. And they said, "What is it?" And I said, "A Western." And I remember that day at Patrick's Roadhouse on PCH. Yeah, they just went, "Please don't say that in any meetings because it's actually a joke in town, and the Western's been dead for 20 years. No Western's made money since Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid." Yeah. And so, you don't do it. And I said, well, not only do I want to do it and I'm going to do it, but I'm leaving town because these meetings are driving me nuts. And I've got to get these voices out of my head. And they said, this is career suicide at 25 years old. And when you've been the hottest new screenwriter in town, and you're going to move out of town into a cabin in the mountains and write a Western. And that's when I wrote Young Guns. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I'd like to say about that, Jeff and Marcia, is that, yes, I dug my heels in and said, I'm going to do this, but I've also I've never just gone out to say, I'll die on this hill of pure artistic integrity and spite my nose to cut off my face, or cut off my nose to spite my face. I knew that the idea had marketing potential. Yeah. Because, that's not what attracted me. I never felt like, oh, this is a hit film. I was crazy about the idea of Billy the Kid and how young he was, and the fact that 41 movies about Billy the Kid always portrayed him as this lone individual. They never got the facts right. But actually he traveled with a young group of regulators. And in a way, they were all Billy the Kid, and they were all young. And I knew that if you could hit that right down the middle, mm-hmm. No one's ever done it, that we could attract a hot young cast and we could rock and roll it. And I remember the first line in the script said, these 6 guys come over the hill on horses. And if it was 150 years later, they'd be on Harleys.
Right. And that's great.
I heard my agent said they read they were getting ready to, and then they said, oh, okay, wait a minute. And it sold on spec. Every young actor, not just the guys who signed on, but Tom Cruise, Sean Penn, the Western had been, dormant for so long. They wanted to do this thing.
Yeah.
Can I ask real quick too? What was that one push that finally your rep said, okay, I'm willing to put everything on the line for this? What was that conversation like?
Well, what I did was I kind of went around the reps and I sent it to a director. And he was a pretty hot director in town, and he read it, and he said, "This is great. I want to do this. I'm directing this movie." And so suddenly had a director attached. He had a relationship with Morgan Creek and Fox. Mm-hmm. And he said, "Who do you see as Billy the Kid?" Well, to this day, I'll tell you, Emilio Estevez was the best Billy the Kid in cinema history, and even James Coburn has said that. Mm-hmm. But at the time, I said Sean Penn. Really saw the young Sean Penn as Billy the Kid. And Chris said, okay, I'm going over to see him in jail. And Sean was literally in jail.
Yep.
I'm going to bring him the script. And Sean wanted to do it, but he was in jail. And there were all kinds of, complications. But anyway, that was the sort of I called my reps, Marcia, and said, so we got Chris Kane attached to direct. Sean Penn wants to do it. And all of these actors who are, in that whole young network have heard about it, and they're all calling me. And they're like, well, we read it, and yeah, this we never really thought you were going to do something like this. This is a new angle. And so that was what led to that. And you're right when you said, it's the Goldman project for me. One of the crazy things was I was listening to some football on Sunday, and they were quoting lines from Young Guns all throughout the broadcast. And I was just saying, and my wife's, did I just hear what? And I said, yeah. And so it's, and every time that if I had a dime for every time that someone has used Young Guns in politics, sports, I remember on the cover of Time magazine, when it was, Clinton and Gore way back when, and Young Guns in politics. But so yeah, it definitely it's made a impact in American culture. And I know one of the things I'm most proud of is it did light the fuse for a lot of filmmakers today who have contacted me and said, that was the film. I was young, high school, walked out of there and said, this is what I want to do. I want to make movies.
And can we talk a little bit about the Westerns? Well,
I was going to say, one of the things about it is what you get told is, what your reps will tell you, what everybody will tell you, what the common wisdom will tell you is Westerns are dead. Yeah. What is the right one works, like the right story, the one that touches the zeitgeist of the moment too. And you were living right in a moment where young guy actors and young performers of all times were really dominating the box office. And it was and you latched on to a concept that just worked with the audiences of the moment and what they enjoyed, and they didn't care. Nobody cared that it was a Western. That wasn't a negative, you know what I mean? It wasn't a thing that was going to keep anybody. It was this of the moment story about rebellious figures that you could relate to in this exact time. Writing that zeitgeist thing is so, to be able to interpret it and feel it is a very important, invisible talent for a writer. I mean, it feels like you really have tried to maintain a touch with that. And it I think what Marcia wants to segue into and I want to talk about too is Westerns themselves. You seem to be a man attracted to American fables, you know what I mean? The fables of America. You did the blues and you've done the Western and even Spirit, it just seems infested with the spirit of the fables of the makings of this country. What is why were you able to make a Western work when everybody tells us they don't work? Is that something you're going to ask Marcia? And then you, Marcia.
A little bit like that, a little bit more about the craft of Western storytelling, because it's, because you write with so much heart and soul and really depth of as Jeff said, these fables, you really get down to it. It's not just, stories with a bow on there. So really wanted to tap into your brain a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, I love Americana, and I love examining myths and legends and drilling down into the truth of those myths and excavating the true story and analyzing the path toward legend and myth. And within that, there's a treasure trove of great story. And I found that with Billy the Kid. And I felt why has everyone focused in 41 different movies on Pat Garrett hunting him down? And the early years, were incredible. This whole experience with the regulators and loyalty toward their mentor. The fact that Billy was this hair trigger personality. And I studied newspaper reports and interviews with him to capture his voice. And so it was a part of the Billy the Kid story that had never been told. It tapped into disenfranchised youth and that whole feeling, contemporary feeling. And we, as you said, we were able to take advantage of this young cast that were out there, that were being billed as the Brat Pack. A lot of wags at the time came out and called it, the Brat Pack on horseback. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the reviews said, "Oh, this is clearly designed." I remember reviewers saying, "I can just imagine this being born in some executive's office saying, 'Let's get the Brat Pack on horseback.'" And I really say, they don't have a clue. But then, and then this is to your question, Marcia, that when it opened number one at the box office, and my agent said, "Stay in the mountains, stay in your cabin."
Right.
I was approached to write the sequel.
And also, can you talk about Young Guns 3? Because
Well, sequentially, then. So with Guns 2, I looked at that and I said, "Okay, well, I'm sort of now painted myself into the corner where I've got to do the Pat Garrett hunting Billy story." But Marcia, what makes Westerns and work and other Westerns not work is the fresh reinvention, the fresh spin on the genre. So with My Young Guns 2, I told the story of Garrett hunting Billy the Kid, but I did it from the point of view of an old man who had come out in the 1950s claiming to be Billy the Kid. Mm-hmm. And Brushy Bill Roberts, he even met with the governor asking for a pardon. And few people knew about that story. Now it's a massive obsession. There are websites and people every day are trying to prove that Brushy Bill was or wasn't Billy the Kid. But no one had ever seen that twist. The movie actually opened in the desert with the old man leading a mule, and everybody's sitting there going, "Okay, Young Guns 2," and suddenly a tractor trailer truck flies by. What?
Yep.
I kind of shook it up. Hidalgo. I won a Western Writers of America Award for Hidalgo and that was a head scratcher for some people because wait a minute, it was set in the Arabian desert, Viggo Mortensen,
right?
But it was a Western,
right? Because what is a Western? Is it a set of themes and feelings and things, or is it a specific location? Like a lot of things have been like neo-Westerns, and they'll call a lot of this Costner stuff, mm-hmm. Like Postman and stuff. They'll talk about the Western, but it's like, it is not just what we think of as the classic thing. It's really a set of criteria and like ethics in a way. It seems to be.
One of my most recent films, The Highwaymen with Costner and Woody Harrelson. Yeah. It's a Western. It's a Western gangster movie. And, 2 retired Texas Rangers come out of retirement to hunt down Bonnie and Clyde. True story that had never been approached from that angle. Yeah. And Hamer had been vilified in the incredible movie Bonnie and Clyde, one of the great 70s movies, which, by the way, Jeff, I watched a lot of movies from the golden era of the 1970s during the strike. But that Bonnie and Clyde, although it was great filmmaking, they got Frank Hamer, the Texas Ranger, all wrong, vilified him, the family sued. And so this was giving him his due and honoring him and telling the story from that side. So again, it's a Western, it explores those themes. It's really, in a lot of ways, it's like Ride the High Country or Lonesome Dove.
Right, epic.
You don't meet Bonnie and Clyde until the last 30 seconds, just like it happened in real life.
Yeah, that's lovely. But I'd love to see what you do with like the Dillingers too, and the folk gangsters of the 30s. Like it's always been a specific zone, and just they had that entrepreneurial spirit of just like they found I always thought so many success stories are you find a crazy loophole nobody's exploited yet, and you just go you just take it, and it's like rob a bank near a state line, dash across it, like there's nothing you can do, and then it's like. Yeah, well, but and thanks to them for interstate police and machine guns. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, gangsters.
Well, I think that's wanted to get into with Bonnie and Clyde was the whole celebrity criminal celebrity culture, where the Texas Rangers were the bad guys and everyone was celebrating these two who didn't care about the American public and, robbing from the rich and giving to the poor. But, they started to lean into that legend that was being built around them. And I think Bonnie Parker was the first Instagram influencer.
Yes.
She was posing for photos with machine guns with her leg up in her high heels on a 34 Ford, and then leaving the undeveloped film behind for the cops.
Yes, I mean, she knew the value of that image even then, and all it did was make their lives easier till it didn't. It's like that technique really worked right up until the moment it stopped working. It was hard to play innocent Bonnie after that too. Like, it was hard to play like coerced into things and stuff like that. I always thought if anything, Clyde had that case to make. It always struck me as a very double indemnity situation. Kind of the situation. Like, I'm gonna lower, like, come on, let's do this. Badlands for Truth, Bonnie and Clyde for epic, for great one-liners. And Bonnie and Clyde too, so much about teenagers of 1967, more than, maybe more than anything going on. So
And got a question from the audience from Chris. So can John talk about how the facts and myth of tracking in the American West informed the Highwaymen?
Wow.
Of tracking. Yeah. Good question. I appreciate that question. I'm a certified wildlife tracker and studied
it all.
I love tracking. It's a hobby. If anybody follows my Instagram, I do something called trackogram, where I get onto a track, follow it, and do photos and kind of identify the animal and study what was going on at the time just by reading tracks. Chris, if you saw my movie Thunderheart that came out in '92 with Val Kilmer and an all-native cast, Graham Greene. Graham Greene plays Walter Crowhorse, a tribal cop who uses Native American tracking skills. And so I spent a lot of time with Native trackers. Frank Hamer, as a young Texas Ranger, grew up tracking. He started patrolling the border on horseback with a Winchester and used Apache tracking skills to hunt down criminals. So he did use that in 1934 while hunting Bonnie and Clyde. And it was a nice juxtaposition of the Old West and the new gangster era.
Yeah, there's your handoff.
Wow.
There's your handoff TV miniseries, like between, the justice between two different worlds as they collide in this spot.
And by the way, John, your friend Julie, her husband is an actor. She's here.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah.
Hey, Julie Denton, and then also Arthur. I don't know what his last name is.
Oh.
He's like, he needs to get on you to get another Western going. So you got some friends here.
I appreciate it. Yeah.
I just want to, I know we're running a little long and I'm sorry, and I really appreciate you being here. This is like a lot of fun. I could talk to you all day about this stuff. I just want to go back to longevity for a second. Everybody asks about career, and everybody's always worried about breaking in and all this stuff. And I always tell them it's like, breaking in is a really long journey and it's very different for everybody and it changes all the time. It's always in flux how to do it. You should focus just as much on the second one and the third one, and build yourself as a, do you have any real, longevity advice like that for people? I'll take it from me too, always looking for that secret, that secret sauce of longevity like that, because it's very, you're working now. As of 12:01, I'm sure back on the clock.
Yeah, you better believe it. Yeah. I'm still going. I've got projects teed up to go in film, TV, and music, and I'm up before 5 o'clock. I've had this, you might call it a superstition. I call it the mojo, or catching the wave like a surfer. That's the big waves are going to hit, and I start early and write religiously, or compulsively, as Mulder Salt used to say. And I feel that kind of blue collar work ethic has been the main reason that I've had a 41-year career with no blips other than the 3 strikes I've endured. But really, I'd say, hard work, the more you put into it, the more you stick to your guns on those passion ideas, while like, young guns, looking for that marketing angle that you can offer up and say, this isn't some self-indulgent passion project. This is why this can work. Back when I started shooting Super 8 films when I was 10 years old, writing scripts, and I would do the posters, and the posters would help me write the script as I was going along, as I would start to see that finished thing. So I think, having a producer hat too, being able to think like a producer has helped me. I've been a writer producer on most of everything I've done. The other thing is, and you hit the nail right on the head, Jeff, is that if you put everything into a script and you get it out there and you're sure, you're feeling this is the one, and you get some good feedback or not, but it doesn't catch fire, that I think the worst thing you can do is let that take you down and crush you, and start to believe those voices in your head that say, well, maybe I don't have it. What I have seen over these long years with other writers is that those who get right back up and start on the next thing are the ones who are working today. And because sooner or later, you fire enough of those arrows at the target, you're going to hit them. And here's the really a key thing, that yes, you loved that script. You're not throwing it in the trash. You're putting it in your portfolio. It's real estate that you own. And The Highwaymen took 17 years to get made. Wow. I wrote that script 17 years before it finally got made. Robert Redford and Paul Newman were going to do it until Paul got sick. I never forgot about it. I keep a whiteboard with all the projects, and every day I look at it and say, what can I be doing about that project? And some I look at and say, well, its time's not here yet, but it will come. Another thing I did, this kind of quirky, romantic, offbeat comedy called Loch Ness, took 11 years to get made. And so those scripts that you've written are part of your portfolio, your creative material portfolio. Something might come together, you might rework them, or you might do like what I did with my novel Dog Beach. I took 3 ideas that didn't get made and threw them into one sauce pot, stirred them up, and I ended up with a very successful thriller novel.
Nice.
But suddenly, elements that weren't working all gelled when I put them together. So I think that's one of the keys to staying in the game for a good long time.
I call me crazy, but I think you just spewed out 5 massive pieces of advice. Make your passion project or interests relevant to now, the audience today. Put your marketing hat on. Know the poster. Know how to sell it. Like, look at your own ideas through that filter. Believe in yourself. Get right back up and work after you fail. Don't worry about it. Fire enough arrows at your target. You're eventually going to hit it. And nothing you've ever done is trash. That's always going to live. It'll have its day.
Right on.
That sounds like an amazing. There's your. Please, Marsha will send you the recording. You can use that for the introduction of your book. Here's how I did it by Dr. Frankenstein. Anyway, John, I really appreciate you being here today. You're like an inspiration. This is my 25th year. And I look at you and I'm like, yep, okay, so maybe I don't have to start selling those condos in Clearwater, Florida yet. Maybe I can find a path, So I really appreciate it. And for new people, just great advice about how to be yourself and bring yourself to multiple decades of work. Really.
Again, and thank you for having me, Jeff and Marsha. Real pleasure. And the timing. The fact that it's on this day where, if there are writers who are tuning in, WGA members, got to say thank you for hanging in there. and the solidarity across the board to all the crews, to people, you know, out there in the world who've stood with us in all this. And it's led to what's going to be a really exciting and creative time. So I hope when any writers, creative people sign off, you know, that you sit right down and get going on something, because it's an exciting time coming up.
And you are, just real quick, mentoring Native American filmmakers, aren't you?
I am, yes.
Okay.
A mentor in the Native American Feature Film Writers Lab. I've worked with the Native American TV Writers Lab, and a group of fellows are selected each year from different tribes, and you know, voices that deserve to be heard, super exciting, talented voices, because that's a cultural world that is really coming into a new exciting place in cinema and TV. So many great Native American storytellers. I do a Zoom room like this, and to help them navigate the industry and develop their ideas and get their stories told.
Awesome. And if we can be a resource in any way, please.
Okay.
Just got a bunch of videos on here, and he keeps it simple too. So however we can. It's been such an honor to have you. Thank you so much for being to do this. And it's like the stars align. I'm so excited.
Thank you so much.
We really appreciate you, John. We're looking forward to seeing what's next. Like